All right, today we are diving deep into one of the most incredible, most fundamental processes in all of biology, human reproduction. We're starting right at the very beginning to understand the amazing journey of how a single sperm cell is even made.
I mean, really think about that for a second. It's this microscopic marvel, a biological assembly line that's running constantly inside half the human population. This is the process that literally carries the genetic blueprint for the next generation. So let's see exactly how it works.
Okay, so the fancy scientific name for this whole thing is spermatogenesis. I know, it sounds a little intimidating, but we're going to break it all down. And to really get how it works, we've got to start with why it even happens in the first place.
So first things first, what's the point of all this? Before we zoom way in on the microscopic details, let's zoom way out and get a handle on the fundamental reason this whole process even exists.
The word itself actually gives us a massive clue. Reproduction. Re meaning again, and production meaning to make. So at its absolute most basic level, it's just the act of making again. And that's the bottom line. That is the core biological mission statement. All of this mind-boggling complexity, all these moving parts, they all serve one single simple purpose: to ensure that life continues from one generation to the next. Okay, so how does that continuation actually happen? Let's take a look at the entire reproductive journey from start to finish. Think of this next part as the high-level roadmap, the GPS directions for creating a new human life. So this lays out the whole sequence of events, and it's got to happen in this exact order. It all kicks off with making the sex cells, that's the sperm and the egg, a process called gametogenesis. After that, you've got insemination, then fertilization, implantation, gestation, and finally birth. Our entire focus today is right there, at step 1, the male side of gametogenesis. All right, so let's pop the hood on the biological machinery that's responsible for this whole operation, the male reproductive system. Now, the system is basically split into two main teams. First, you have the primary sex organs, like the testis. This is the factory floor. It's where the sperm are actually built from scratch. Then, you have the secondary sex organs, all the ducts and glands. Think of them as the logistics and support crew. They don't make the sperm, but they make sure it's nourished, packaged, and shipped out correctly. So, breaking that down even more, you have the testes. Those are the two factories. Then you have the accessory ducts, which are basically the highway system. The accessory glands are the fluid producers, creating the stuff that mixes with sperm to make semen. And finally, the external genitalia are the delivery system. And here's a closer look at that highway system. As soon as the sperm are built, they go on a journey. They travel through a whole series of tubes, starting in the rete testis, moving through the vasa efferentia. They spend some time maturing in the epididymis, and then they get sent into the vas deferens to await the next part of their journey. Okay, we've seen the overall map. Now it's time to go inside the factory itself. We're zooming way in on the testis to find the exact assembly line where these sperm are actually constructed. So a testes isn't just one big empty space. It's actually highly organized, neatly divided into about 250 little compartments called testicular lobules. So you can picture a factory with 250 separate little workshops inside. And inside each one of those 250 workshops, you find between 1 and 3 incredibly long, tightly coiled tubes. And these are the famous seminiferous tubules. This is it. This is ground zero, the precise location where sperm production happens. So if we could shrink down and look at a cross-section of just one tubule, we'd meet the key players. Inside the walls of the tube, you've got the male germ cells. This is the raw material, the starter dough for sperm. And right next to them, you have Sertoli cells, which are awesome. They're like nurse cells, constantly providing support and nourishment. Then, in the space outside the tubes, you've got the Leydig cells, and their job is to produce that all-important male hormone, testosterone. So we've met the whole cast of cells. Now for the main event. How do they actually do it? Let's walk through the step-by-step transformation that is spermatogenesis. This whole assembly line doesn't even turn on until puberty. It all begins with a starter cell called a spermatogonium. Now this cell is what we call diploid, meaning it has a full set of 46 chromosomes, just like most of the other cells in your body. But here's the thing. A sperm can't have 46 chromosomes because it has to combine with an egg to make a new person. So the whole point of this process is to cut that number exactly in half. To do that, the cell goes through a special two-part division called meiosis. And at the end of it all, you get 4 brand new cells, called spermatids, and each one is now haploid, carrying just 23 chromosomes. Perfect.
I mean, just think about that efficiency for a second. For every single starter cell that goes into this pipeline, the body gets 4 potential sperm out the other side. That is a remarkably productive system.
But hold on, the job isn't quite done yet. See, these new spermatids are just simple, round little cells. They don't have a tail, they can't swim, they're not ready. To become the streamlined swimmer that we all recognize as a sperm cell, they need to go through one final, pretty dramatic transformation. Okay, and this is where the terminology can get a little tricky, but it's really simple when you see it laid out. So, spermatogenesis, that's the entire process we've been talking about, from the starter cell all the way to those 4 round spermatids. Then you have spermiogenesis. That is just that final transformation step, the physical makeover from a round cell into a sperm with a head and a tail. And finally, spermiation, that's the launch. It's the moment the finished sperm is finally released from its nurse cell and pushed out into the tubule to start its journey.
And there you have it. An incredibly complex, amazingly efficient biological process that creates millions upon millions of potential sperm, each one carrying half the genetic story of a brand new human life. But once they're made, what happens next? What decides which one, if any, fulfills its ultimate destiny? Well, that is a story for another time.